Now, defense lawyer Tshepo Thobane dropped a bombshell at the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial this week when he alleged it was not his client who pulled the trigger of the gun that killed soccer star Senzo Meyiwa in 2014. He alleged it was Longo Twala who brought the gun to singer Kelly Khumalo's Vosloorus home and that she was the one who accidentally pulled that trigger. There was even more drama when Thobane submitted that he would bring a witness who would testify that Meyiwa had been having an affair with Kelly's sister Zandi, who was dating Twala at the time. Thobane represents 4 of the 5 accused on trial for the football star's murder. The trial has now been postponed to November 14th. Joining us now for more on Tumelo Madlala's testimony this week is a legal expert, attorney Modidima Mannya. Very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. A lot of bombshells dropped, of course, as we listened to the details around what may have transpired on the night Senzo Meyiwa was killed. What did you make of the witness and the testimony that he gave?
Yes, good evening and good evening to your viewers. I think it's getting more confusing by the day. The evidence around the shooting may actually lead to a conclusion that there was no murder. Remember, murder involves the intentional killing of a person. Now, I understood the attorney to be saying that he's going to bring a witness who will testify that Longo Twala brought a firearm, that Senzo disarmed him, gave the firearm to Kelly, and in the process of Kelly handing the firearm back to Senzo, a shot went off. If that really happened, it means that may have been accidental. It doesn't seem to suggest that there was an intention to shoot Senzo. And if that be the case, and if that evidence is going to be given, and if that evidence were to be accepted, then surely there's no matter.
Now, with that in mind, and that conversation, perhaps we'll see it broadening in the later months. What came out as a contradiction when it was the order of events described by Madlala as to what happened as they tried to transport Meyiwa into a vehicle, taking him to hospital, and then speaking about how he made a few phone calls now upon learning of Meyiwa's passing, saying that he phoned Meyiwa's brother's Fiso. And now there were questions about where he called Senzo Meyiwa's brother to tell him that the footballer had been accidentally shot.
Paul, let me say that you will never get perfect evidence anywhere, and that is why the presiding officer has to do an evaluation. He's got to apply caution to some of the things. He's got to identify the contradictions and actually see if these contradictions are material. Let me put it this way. There are 5 persons appearing in court on the basis that they are the ones who committed the murder. Now, we have got probably the 3rd type of version here. And the first one is that it's them who shot. The second one was that there were 2 people seen running away. And now with this latest development, we now hear that there was an accidental shot. Let's assume that Madlala indeed called Senzo's brother to tell him that Senzo was accidentally shot. Now, accidentally means nobody intended to kill Senzo. And at the heart of the crime of murder is intention. And that's what the state must prove. So either the 5 accused are not guilty of murder, or any other person, including the person alleged to have pulled the trigger, is not guilty of murder. So, the point I'm trying to make is that some of these things may seem to be mind-blowing, but they are actually side shows to the real issues. Remember, we still have to get to a stage, and the prosecutor did intimate this, that there are admissions which still have to be dealt with, and this relates to the confessions made by the accused.
And in looking at the witnesses, we know that the Madlala also in court pointed out accused number 2 as being the alleged intruder, also speaking about what happened in the house and where Senzo Meyiwa was when this intruder was being tackled.
Yes, but remember, the issue of the pointing out is also now subject to being interrogated to determine its admissibility, because the correct procedure to identify a suspect is at an identity parade, which doesn't seem like it happened, or if it happened, this person was not pointed out. But that is, again, may only be admissible subject to certain conditions being met, including whether the court will be satisfied that he's actually been correctly identified. Remember, he would have related to what happened on the day of the incident. So issues like whether you actually saw him relative to what the rest of the evidence will become an issue, whether there was lighting, whether he could properly identify him. He said there was a scuffle. So all those factors will ultimately have to be considered to determine. But it's also early days, by the way, because we don't know whether there are more witnesses which will come and corroborate at least some aspects of this evidence. And as I said, if, for instance, there were witnesses another witness who were to come and point out to him, and in fact the accused that have made the confessions are unable to get out of those confessions, the case will turn on that.
Mm. And, you know, perhaps also looking at another matter that came out very strongly was the learning of an alleged affair between Senzo Meyiwa and Zandi Khumalo's sister. Where may this argument be heading in trying to prove some sort of motive?
Look, I think my understanding is that there are two things. One is that from the side of the witness, the defense seems to be trying to impugn his credibility. At the same time, they seem, and if I take you back, you remember when this whole debate about the docket 375 came in?
Yes.
The argument was that the people in the house are the ones that have to be charged. But the evidence doesn't seem to be moving more in that direction, but it seems to be creating an impression that there was a motive on the part, at least, of Khumalo. That's far as we see. But let me tell you, I find it hard to comment on these things because, and one must say that, you know, I don't want to participate in the stereotype that sees women as immoral in relationships.
Yeah.
You know, I expect somebody to come and give cogent evidence about this affair. I mean, if somebody suggests that I slept with you, that person must come and provide the evidence that I slept with you. It cannot be by suggestion and innuendo. And I really want to know who can come and stand up and say, I was there when they slept. So some of these things look more sensational, but they may not actually carry any probative value.
Absolutely. And going back a little bit then to accused number 2 being pointed out by Dumelo Madlala, we saw Advocate Zandile Mshololo standing up to say we cannot allow this until a formal identification parade has taken place in the case where it may now be a mistaken identity.
Look, the identification parade has not taken place. So there's nothing that says you will have to go back to an identification parade. In any event, the witness has already pointed out somebody. So what would be the point of an identity parade? The question is it's not whether an identity parade should be held or not held, but the question is whether, based on the pointing in court, the court will be satisfied that the evidence of the pointing should be admissible subject to what I've already indicated.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's the other argument that has been put to the court around Longwe Twala and also hearing of Chico Twala offering Khumalo a holiday. Also now just swaying the story to a different end.
Well, you know, I'm not sure where that is taking us, but before I just imagine if I find you having been marked and I were to say to you, can I take you to a coffee shop? I don't know what turns on that. Does it mean you were part of the crime? At the end of the day, there are rules about what evidence gets admissible. And one of the key elements of that is that the evidence must be relevant.
Yeah.
I didn't understand the context in which Tshepo is alleged to have offered Kelly a holiday. Somebody can come and say, look, obviously Tshepo is a producer or they have a business relationship. She was distraught. And now, of course, an act of generosity to say, can I take you somewhere to go and come down now that we have lost a partner? Anything is possible. But just to make the bare allegation that Tshepo offered a holiday and that presents a motive, it's like this issue that you are raising, people raise and say, well, they had an insurance policy. I mean, who doesn't have an insurance policy? And who doesn't have a beneficiary in an insurance policy? So the question is whether this is relevant to the murder itself.
Yeah. And of course, just looking at the legal substance of this case and where it's going with more witnesses who could possibly be called, what is your evaluation? I mean, this has taken quite some time, and we've heard Judge Tshepo Thobane speaking about the delay, saying that let us not delay it any further, let this matter proceed. How do you see it panning out in terms of credibility and quality of witnesses?
Well, firstly, I think we must all commend Judge Maumela. He has handled a quite potentially difficult situation, and the trial is now really running. As you can see, even the latest antics of trying to delay it did not work in the last few days. But as I say, the question is, how many other witnesses are coming? What is going to be their evidence? And what value is it going to add? What amount of corroboration are we going to have? As I said, we already have almost 3 mutually destructive versions. Remember, one of the part of the evidence is that Longwe Twala was with 2 people in the car, and somebody seems to have suggested that he saw 2 people running away. So we don't know whether these 2 people that somebody says she saw them run away are the people that were with Longwe. We don't know whether, and Magala has said clearly that the allegation that Longwe brought in a gun is lies. He just calls it lies. Now the question is, Longwe was in the house. Are we going to, and I kept on raising this issue, are we going to have somebody who was present, an eyewitness, who will first confirm Longwe came into the house, drew the gun, gave it to Senzo, disarmed him, or Senzo disarmed Longwe, gave the gun to Kelly. At least that version. Or are we going to have an eyewitness who says somebody entered the house that was not part of us at the time, demanded money or cell phones, and there was a scuffle, and a gunshot went through, and Senzo was shot and killed. That is what we have to deal with, and that is what the evidence that has to be evaluated finally goes back to.
Very well. Thank you so much. That was attorney Modidima Mannya, a legal expert, trying to connect the dots as we try and make sense of the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial.